Hey college football fans, so the CFP rankings come out tonight, and so as one of the hosts of the CFP podcast and CFPcollegefootball.com, yours truly, Chappy, is going to break down who I think should be the top 4 teams and then the first 2 that just missed it. So to lay it all out here so you have a frame of reference, I've got Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, TCU, Clemson. Those are my top 6 teams. Now I'm going to break down the order and explain my reasoning for why they are where they are. So let's start at the top. Tennessee. I think that they're the most deserving team for that number 1 ranking because they have 5 wins over teams that were ranked when they played them. Now I know things change, and it's just the nature of the game that as you lose more, you're going to drop. But at the time when Tennessee had to play these teams, I'm talking Pitt and LSU on the road. I'm talking Alabama, Florida, Kentucky, all at Neyland Stadium. There's a psyche that you have to build up to play those ranked teams, and those teams were ranked for a reason. There were a lot of individuals who saw them before game time and projected them to be pretty good. Now injuries have happened and things have fallen in some areas, but nonetheless these were 5 important wins for the Tennessee Volunteers to get. 3 of them came at home, 2 on the road. I think that they own the best win of all those 6 teams that I mentioned. Beating Alabama for the first time in 15 years. Actually, I guess it was 16 years. Going through that emotional gauntlet, and Josh Heupel, who really didn't have a stake in this rivalry until he became the coach at Tennessee. That's saying a lot, that they beat Nick Saban, they beat the Crimson Tide. They've got the number 1 offense. They've got a Heisman candidate at quarterback, a Biletnikoff candidate at wide receiver. Their defense is playing better. I liken this team a lot to the 2000 Oklahoma Sooners, who Josh Heupel was the quarterback for. And the similarities are this. First of all, it was a program that historically has been good, but was down in recent times. And going into that 2000 season, the Oklahoma Sooners were ranked, I think, like in the 20s. Tennessee was ranked in the mid area. I can't remember where they started off this season. I personally did not have them ranked inside the top 20, not calling myself an expert, but I like to think that I know a little bit of what I'm talking about. They've exceeded those expectations. They have broken some of those streaks. We talked about breaking the streak against Alabama. They also broke a streak against LSU, going and winning in Death Valley. They overcame a history of shortcomings and failures against the Florida Gators, even within their own home stadium at Neyland Stadium. So they're doing a lot of the things that Oklahoma did in 2000. Oh, by the way, they're also running this high-octane offense that most college football defenses have not been able to stop, and it's been embarrassing. So I think that those 2 teams are very similar. We saw what 2000 Oklahoma did. They ended up winning the national championship, and they impressed with a lot of victories. So that's why I put Tennessee number 1. Number 2, Ohio State. They've got 2 wins over ranked teams, 1 at home against Notre Dame in the opener where they won by 12. Notre Dame has not been as good as we thought they would be this year. However, they are a 5-3 football team right now, and they're getting to play a little bit better. They also beat Penn State on the road this last weekend by 13 points, and really, they should have won by more than that. Penn State got a backdoor cover, so ultimately, Ohio State was winning that game by 20 points. They too have a high-octane offense, which makes them a threat and a contender to win any game against any team that they go up against. Heisman contender at quarterback, Biletnikoff contender at wide receiver, and Marvin Harrison Jr. Their defense, I think, is playing better than Tennessee's right now, and we're starting to see some star power on that side. Tommy Eichenberg is a very underrated linebacker. We all saw what JT Tuiomalau did against Penn State this last weekend, so that gives them maybe a little bit more of a boost. I think that they've got the number 3 best win of the season from all these 6 teams, and that was beating Penn State on the road by double digits. Then you go down to number 3, Georgia. I think there's a little bit of recency bias here. They're the defending national champs. They haven't lost since they won their title last year. They're playing efficient on offense. Stetson Bennett is not making many mistakes. Brock Bowers is lighting it up at tight end. He should be the hands-down Mackey Award winner this year. But he's also putting up highlight-type catches that would make him possibly into consideration for the Biletnikoff if he was a true receiver and if he didn't have to contend against Jalen Hyatt. But that'll be a good matchup on opposite sides of the ball when Hyatt and Bowers go against each other. Their teams go against each other this weekend. Georgia is playing well defensively, but they're not as havoc-inducing as we've seen them in the past. They're actually in the bottom third in team sacks and team tackles for loss. Now that could be that they're kind of calling off the dogs, no pun intended, because a lot of their games they've kind of put away. They have not played an overly powerful schedule. They really have just one big win, but it was a huge one. The blowout against the Oregon Ducks, who are currently ranked number 7 in the polls. So I put that as the second best win of any of these 6 teams this year. Number 2 behind Tennessee's victory over Alabama. So I got the Dogs at number 3. Number 4 is debatable between Michigan, Clemson, and TCU. So I'm putting Michigan there because I like to weigh it more on best team, more so than their resume. Michigan, I think, is a more dominant team than TCU and Clemson are. On a neutral field, if I had to put money on the game, I would put money on the Wolverines over Clemson and over TCU, even if everybody was healthy. Michigan, they've got a Heisman candidate at running back in Blake Corum. They're getting great offensive line play, very physical. Their defense is locking down opposing teams. They shut down Penn State and ran all over Penn State offensively. I think that they've got some underrated receivers in that group. There's also, they're getting good special teams play, and there's the coaching factor. I think that those Michigan coaches are coaching their players very well right now, and Jim Harbaugh is a much improved coach ever since he had to kind of swallow his pride, cut back on some of his influence in play calling, and cut back on that salary as well. They have really just one impressive win, and that was the Penn State victory, although it was a blowout victory. They beat the Nittany Lions by more than Ohio State did. I put that as the number 4 best win or most impressive win of this season from among these top players. And they've generally been rolling through their schedule. Yeah, Maryland gave them a little bit of a test. Indiana played it close in the first half, but I really think the situation with what happened to Coach Mike Hart played into that. So Michigan has controlled pretty much every game so far this season, and they should, because their strength of schedule is not very good. Not a great resume to go off of. If you want to look at TCU, I would put them at number 5. And you could make a good argument that they should be in at number 4. They've got 4 wins over ranked teams. 2 were by double digits, blowing out Oklahoma at home and beating Kansas State by 10 at home. Granted, that Kansas State victory, which I put as number 5 most impressive and the 5th best victory by any of these teams this year, you have to take that with a grain of salt and put an asterisk next to it, because KSU was down their number 1 and number 2 quarterbacks. I truly believe if Adrian Martinez and even Will Howard stays healthy, the Wildcats end up winning that game. They were up 28-10 at one point. So kudos to the Horned Frogs for coming back, but Kansas State, I think, plays that and comes out on top if they're still healthy at quarterback there. And even with Deuce Vaughn. Vaughn went out of that game at one point. So 4 wins over ranked teams. 2 of them were close by single digits. They've got a balanced offense. We know that they're explosive on offense. Kendre Miller is having himself a year at running back. Max Duggan is one of those guys who's just a gamer and gives you a shot to win every time he trots out there. So if he stays healthy, they're in good shape. Their defense has been a little bit of a question mark, though, and that's what kind of hesitates me to call them the 4th best team right now, because the other teams ahead of them, I think, roll out a better defense. Then you go to my number 6 team, the Clemson Tigers. Offense, they've been suspect. So they're kind of, I think, opposite of TCU. They've got questions on offense, but they've got generally a good enough defense to where they've got a shot to win against any of the teams outside of Tennessee and Ohio State. I think that they, Michigan might even have that much of an advantage over them, but I think head-to-head it might be a toss-up between the Horned Frogs and Clemson. I would actually favor Clemson in that one just because I think they're more used to it. They've got a coaching staff led by Dabo Swinney. While even though they've got new coordinators, the culture is in place, and the talent they've been recruiting for a while, DJU, is getting better. I think the receivers are stepping up. Will Shipley is emerging into a very good but quietly good running back on the national scene. So I put TCU at 5, Clemson at 6, and those are my reasoning and my rationale. So I know that everybody's got their own top 4 or their top 6. I'm interested to see where the committee puts them out today. So send me your thoughts on Twitter at Chappy CFB, and looking forward to it tonight. Also looking forward to some action tonight. So those are my thoughts. I'm Chappy. This is what I know.